Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Natalie Boyum, and I am the president and founder of the Defeating Epilepsy Foundation. We are a 501c3 in Southern California, and our mission is to provide the advocacy and educational resources needed in the epilepsy community and our society. We would like to welcome you to our series, Living Healthy with Dr. Kate. Dr. Kate Couchman is a health coach in South Africa. Kate has epilepsy and has a passion to help those battling epilepsy live happy and healthy lives. In this discussion, we will be focusing on the vagus nerve. What is the vagus nerve and what role does it play when it comes to epilepsy? We will learn about how important the vagus nerve is and the effect it has on all of us. Kate, what is the vagus nerve and what are some of its major functions?
Good evening, everybody. The vagus nerve is we have 12 cranial nerves. So those are our major nerves in the brain. And the vagus nerve comes from the brain right the way down along near our vocal cords to the heart, the lungs, the diaphragm, and then to our digestive system. And when I say the digestive system, that includes the liver, gallbladder, kidneys, and all the way along the intestines as well. It's got both sensory function, so it can detect whether there's food in the intestines, and it's also got a parasympathetic function. So it's very important in calming the body down. We often talk about rest and digest, and that's related to the parasympathetic nervous system. When we're stressed, we talk about fight and flight. That's the sympathetic, and then the parasympathetic works kind of in opposition or in harmony. That's like putting the brakes on and allowing our bodies to rest and digest. And the vagus nerve work is one of the main nerves of the parasympathetic nervous system.
And that's really interesting because, when I was first learning about the vagus nerve, it had to do with the VNS device. And I had a number of friends who had implants due to having drug-resistant epilepsy. Some of it controlled their seizures completely. Others, it reduced seizure activity. But what was interesting was so many of people have told me really how sensitive of a nerve it is and how important it is to have your VNS adjusted properly. Some told me it was actually until they got it down to where they needed it, it was at times very painful.
Yeah, I've heard that it can be, and I think because it has that sensory function as well, so it's able to feel. And so when the nerve's being stimulated, yes, it does help to calm the body down. But with something like a VNS, it can't just trigger one aspect of the nerve. So it can heighten the sensory function. And so absolutely, pain can be stimulated through a VNS.
How is the vagus nerve stimulated naturally?
So there's quite a few ways, and it's helpful for anyone because stress is such an important factor for people with epilepsy, because the vagus nerve runs down the neck alongside the vocal cords. If we hum or if we sing or gargle, as long as we're moving our vocal cords, it slightly massages the vagal nerve, and there's two of them. Two branches comes down on either side, so that's why I'm pointing to my neck like this. And by massaging it, it has a slightly relaxing effect. So just by that simple thing, humming, singing, gargling can help to calm the vagus nerve down and therefore help to decrease our stress levels, and that can help have a positive effect on seizure activity. It also control our breathing because it's attached to our lungs. Now, when you think we're in a stressed environment, we need our lungs, we need lots of oxygen to get around our bodies. And so generally at that point, if we're running fast, we're going to be taking lots of quick breaths. So our body knows short, sharp breaths to be a stressed state. So if we can slow our breath down as much as possible and control them, long, deep breaths, going all the way to our diaphragm, because again, the vagus nerve connects to the diaphragm, then it sends a message to our brains telling us that we're not in a stressed mode and we're not under attack. We can relax. Helps that parasympathetic nervous system just know it's all right. We can relax. Allows the vagus nerve to relax.
It's really
Another
interesting.
thing,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
no, another option is to cold water. So we can either jump into a cold pool or literally just splashing our face with cold water, ideally getting it onto our neck, but just a little bit of cold water. Or if you're in the shower, a few minutes is all the body needs. It literally just needs to cool down for a while, because when we're stressed, our body temperature increases. And so by cooling our body temperature down, it sends that message saying, it's okay, you're not stressed, you can relax. And then the last ones are moving your body in a calm, gentle way. So whatever that looks like for each individual, it may be yoga, it may be gardening, it may just be going for a walk. All of those are beneficial. Oh, sorry, there's two more. Supplements like omega-3, because they have an anti-inflammatory effect, and probiotics, because they support the gut health, and they've proven over and over again that there's a really strong link between the gut and the brain. So if we can improve gut health, then it's naturally going to help brain functioning.
And what I was saying about it being really interesting is I never realized how long the vagus nerve was and how many vital organs it connects to and the effect it has on it. When it comes to cold water, when I was training a lot, when I first got into powerlifting and was adapting to changing my style of exercise from I did previous a lot of cardio with doing martial arts, and when I started dividing it and doing some cardio but really starting to focus on strength conditioning, I had a lot of inflammation in my body from starting to build more muscle. And a friend of mine who is a massage therapist, and he does other advanced holistic services with his business, said to me, take a cold shower once in a while. And I thought, that has to be crazy. I can't imagine standing in the shower for a few minutes and just allowing myself to be in cold water or taking a cold bath. But actually it does reduce inflammation quite a bit. And when you're lifting heavy, it actually is a great way to help the body heal and de-stress.
Absolutely. And you'll see a lot of the athletes in the Olympics, they talk about it as well. And they have like ice baths. And they've shown for depression and anxiety that it is proven over and over again that swimming in cold water is highly beneficial because of the soothing effect that it has on the nervous system. So sometimes with stress, anxiety, and depression, we want to try and control it. And it's not always something that's within our control, but our nervous system responds so well to some of these that I'm speaking about. And this is why I'm so passionate about it, because it can still be within our control, not necessarily that we can think it away, but we can do stuff so that we feel as if we're taking steps towards being healthier and being, because I know certainly for me having epilepsy, the fear of having a seizure when I went out was frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
And so I didn't want to just put my treatment protocol into the hands of a neurologist who didn't always seem to have my health in their best interests. I wanted to feel as if I was being proactive. And so doing some of these are simple things and have such a great effect for certain people. They're not always going to help everyone, but they're simple things that are worth trying, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. And it's something that I stress very much for our supporters through not just talks with you and other advocates, but through our blog and our videos, how important overall wellness truly is. I look at dealing with epilepsy now for 41 years, and I've just come to realize you can't expect your medication to be like a magic wand. You take it and the problem disappears. It helps to reduce or alleviate some of the problems it brings. But really, at the end of the day, you have to make an overall effort and find the tools that work for what's best for you. Like you said, not what works for one person may not work for another, but you have to make the conscious effort to see what really works for you to achieve overall wellness and be able to function in life and be able to live to the fullest despite having a neurological disorder.
Absolutely. Yep. And the freedom of being able to reduce your medication because you're living a healthier lifestyle, to me is just so freeing
Oh, it
if
is.
you're able to. And I'm not saying that that's possible for everybody, but it is so exciting when you're able to, because medication may be causing side effects, or for some people, the meds may just not agree with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, finding that happy balance is a really exciting point and something that I love working out with people.
It's awesome. Well, for people who are battling epilepsy who have a vagus nerve stimulator, are there any other benefits besides controlling seizure activity?
Well, yes, I think so, or I believe so, because stress is such a major contributor to seizures. So if we can control our stress, then I believe that we can control our seizures. So VNS is helping our nervous system to get out of that fight and flight mode and into this rest and digest mode,
Mhm.
because this is when we're able to heal, when we can recover, when we can boost our immune system and anti-inflammatory responses start kicking in. So that's when our brain fog can ease, our memory can improve, our cognitive processes go back to what they should be, and where we can start feeling as if we've had a restful night's sleep. So we don't need to rely on caffeine and other stimulants to help us through the day, which many of us can't or shouldn't have anyway. So if we can control our stress, whether it's through VNS or just looking after the vagus nerve, or whatever method it may be, then I believe we're helping our nervous system as a whole and therefore helping our bodies tremendously. So yes, definitely, I think there's huge benefits.
Okay. What is polyvagal theory and what role does the vagus nerve play in it?
Okay, so the polyvagal theory is something that I came across a while ago. It was discovered by a man called Stephen Porges, and it's got to do with a lot to do with post-traumatic stress disorder and the sympathetic nervous system. So we start off in a space where we feel safe, secure, supported, and this he classifies as the ventral vagal. So the ventral is the front part, and obviously the vagal nerve. So if you think of a little puppy lying on its back, happy for you to scratch its tummy, he's vulnerable, happy, um, happy to socialize, happy for you to do anything. Unfortunately, because we're constantly exposed to stress and the fight or flight mode kicks in, which is our sympathetic nervous system, this can start wearing us down. So that sweet little puppy that's lying there starts realizing that he needs to fend for himself. And if we feel as if we're running out of reserves, depending on the support system around us and how well we support our bodies, then we can start going into a like freeze mode. And this is the dorsal vagal mode, where we kind of turn into a tortoise, in that we want a hard protective shell over us and we just want to retreat. We want to hide. We feel overwhelmed. The nervous system just wants to shut down.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily a conscious decision, but I think the link with neurological conditions like epilepsy are very close. I've always said that as a type A personality, I will push and push and push, and I never knew when to stop. My epilepsy was the only thing that told me when to stop, because I would just collapse. So the fact that the dorsal vagal is a state of collapse, or that whole overwhelmed feeling, if we don't have enough reserves, to me, it just ties in really well with epilepsy. So what we want to do is find a balance between that cute little puppy lying on its tummy, feeling vulnerable, feeling playful, coping with the stress that life throws with us, and not having to be forced into the tortoise mode where the system shuts down, where everything feels like it's too much for us. And therefore, through the vagus nerve, helping ourselves to control as much as possible and allowing time for rest and digest.
No, and that's very important. I mean, I didn't for many years realize how much my personality played or had, I should say, an impact on my overall health. Myself having PTSD, I've had the biggest problem of having chronic stress due to when I was not addressing it, which really played an impact on harming my thyroid gland. It harmed my adrenal gland. It did a lot of had a very negative impact. And I think the hardest thing to learn to follow what you're describing was really teaching myself to take a step back. I didn't have to always be in first place. I didn't always have to be at the top of things. That I had to be realistic, and maybe some days I can get a lot of work done and some days I might only be able to do a couple things, and then I just have to say, okay, it's one of those days. You need to rest. So rest. And with being a very competitive person, telling myself to just rest really at one point in my life was, I don't want to say physically impossible, but emotionally and mentally, I could not accept it. And I think really what made me finally accept it, and it's unfortunately it took this much, but after having COVID and being a lawn hauler, having to deal with the symptoms for 6, almost 7 months, I realized I can't play around. I have to listen to my body, because if I don't listen to my body, it could, in one, in the case of having COVID, I did get sick enough where at one point where I didn't think I was going to pull through. I didn't think I was going to make it to Christmas. I had gotten that sick, and I was hiding from a lot of people how sick I really was. And it made me appreciate when I recovered, it made me really appreciate what I have and not to take it for granted.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's the case so often, that we do push and we pretend that we're okay. Um, Instead of reaching out and instead of asking for help, and there's no shame at all in asking for help. Um, but we used to helping others, or we used to being strong, or not letting our guard down. So we don't want to disappoint others. Um, but there's no disappointment in being honest either.
Yes.
Um, it's interesting the way that we think and what we think is potentially going to be disappointing to other people, when they also looking out for us and they don't want to disappoint us. So yeah,
No, it's
that's
the
the whole.
truth. It really is. Well, what practices can people with epilepsy follow to prevent fight, flight, or freeze?
Okay, so obviously fight and flight are our normal stress responses, and freeze is in a very, very severe state. So stress happens constantly. What we want to do is learn how to manage one's stress before it gets overwhelming. Um, and learning how to optimize our parasympathetic nervous system. So that's our the things that bring us joy, the things that make us feel safe, and that feel as if we connected within a community. That's all part of the healing journey. So we mustn't, when we are feeling stressed, it's quite natural to withdraw, to isolate, feel anxious and depressed. But I strongly encourage people to start incorporating things that make them happy into their lives, even if they are wanting to withdraw. And I'm not saying that they have to throw themselves into a social circle at all, but write a list, keep a list near them of things that do make them happy in order to incorporate them into their everyday life. Um, so that when they're down, they can look at them and try and, if they've got their happy song, or if their favorite movie, or spending time in the garden, playing with their pets, anything that helps lift them up, so that it helps to balance their stress levels. Um, Another thing that I'm passionate about, and again has been proven over and over again, your gut health is so strongly linked with your brain health. So ensure that you're feeding all the good bugs in your tummy. Um, don't don't overdo the sugary processed foods. Often when we're feeling down, that's what we start craving, because we do get a little sugar high and it allows us to feel good for a while. Then we crash. When we crash, extra cortisol is released, extra insulin is released, and then the stress hormones again. And so then we start feeling worse. So if we can keep our blood sugar stable, then we don't add extra stress to our body. And lastly, if you need support, ask for it from a coach, a psychologist, a friend, anyone you feel comfortable with, so that you feel heard and you can move forward and get the best that you deserve.
No, absolutely. And I think I can't speak for other countries, but here in America, one of the biggest frustrations I have with our healthcare system is the lack of health for or help for mental health support, and also the stigmatization that's been placed on it. And for the longest time, because of the stigma, I was already frustrated with being stigmatized for having epilepsy, and I didn't want to be stigmatized or declared crazy when I knew I wasn't. But I found finally I got to a point of life where I thought, you know what? I don't have time to care what other people think. And I feel no shame that I do work with a psychologist. I do work with a therapist on a regular basis. And I encourage our supporters or anyone in general, if you need that as a resource to find happiness and to have balance in your life, there is no shame in working with a mental health counselor or a health coach or putting some type of plan together to help reduce anxiety, depression, because I can say from a personal traumatic experience, I had a very graphic traumatic experience and went into freeze. And people don't realize when they go into freeze, it's a weird response. I can say when I went to freeze and somebody hurt me very badly, I just almost accepted that. What could I do about it? Even though I could do something about it, there were the options to do something about it. That time when I was in freeze, my body was almost like, well, yeah, it happened. It wasn't nice, but we got to live. So suck it up and move on. And I know this sounds so negative, but at the time, that's how my body felt. And then 7 years later, I had a really graphic night terror as almost the event happened again. And it's at that point where you get out of that freeze state and it's almost like reality hits. It's so essential on how you react to it. And I didn't react to it the right way. And I tried to hide it and I got angrier and I got angrier. And then I went from anger to really being depressed to the point where I really started to think, can I even move forward? I felt
Mm.
so physically, emotionally, mentally drained. I just, part of my body was going, you know what? You've been dealing with this for almost 40 years. Haven't you done your time? Haven't you put enough time in? And thank goodness I have a wonderful support system with my husband and children that I was able to step back and say, you know what? Suicide isn't an option. And it was probably the toughest thing I did, but the best thing I did for myself was reaching out and acknowledging I needed help and telling the counselor that I was with, saying, you know, I know I can't give up, but I'm so tired. I'm so physically drained from what happened. I know I can move on, but I honestly don't know how to at this moment because of not having any energy. Where do I even begin with this? And I feel we need to let people know on a global level, if you know you've dealt with any level of trauma or any level of frustration living with a lifelong chronic illness, there is no shame in saying, I need help. I'm not okay right now, but I know I can get okay if I work at it. And I hope in time through my advocacy work that people here in the epilepsy community can see there's no there's no shame and there's nothing wrong with saying I need help, because in doing my research and seeing the levels of suicide that people commit in the epilepsy community, it really breaks my heart to see that people are so hurt and isolated and dealing with this that finally they feel that's the one and only option, that there's nothing left. And I hope in time through my work I can help change that and give people a different perspective on how to deal with epilepsy.
They say that, I mean, statistically, and this is globally, I'm on the National Executive Committee of Epilepsy South Africa, and our stats are pretty similar to global statistics, but they say that there's about 3/4 of people with both epilepsy and chronic illnesses have anxiety or depression.
Mhm.
Um, Being diagnosed with a chronic illness is difficult to accept, especially I think when it's an invisible illness and people can't see it and they don't understand it. And the fact that we don't always know when it's coming next, or what are people going to think about it, and how are they going to react, and what are they going to think about us, and do they think that, what do they think, not necessarily more than what do they think. And so, yeah, anxiety goes up tremendously, and depression can be linked with that. And obviously, stress is very closely linked with that as well. And if we don't get help, then as people with epilepsy, it's going to impact on our seizures.
Mhm.
So not only are we in a bad place, feeling awful, but then we end up having more seizures, which we then get medicated for, which can then have more side effects for us, and we just end up feeling awful.
Yeah.
So there's so many people available that if you've reached out before and you haven't had a good experience, try somebody else.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people who really care and who are fantastic. So if you haven't found the right one yet, keep trying.
No, absolutely. And as difficult as a journey as it is, I agree 100%. I'm still on that journey. I had to file a couple appeals because there's only two doctors, two neurologists in my area who are in our medical group. And the one, I already saw him and he treated me terribly. And the other one, his reviews were horrific. I mean, verbal abuse, shouting down at patients, not listening. And the one doctor I'm hoping to see, you know, I fought almost 8 months, maybe between 6 and 8 months, I can't remember exactly, just to win the appeal, to get the thumbs up to see him. And now I'm fighting to, despite sending in all the paperwork and my medical and other information, I'm fighting now just to get the appointment. So it can be, in one aspect, very discouraging for patients. They're like, why am I fighting? But like you said, and I'll, side with that 100%. At the end of the day, you must advocate for yourself. If you really want to be healthy, you can't just settle. You can't give up. You can't give in, because the only person you're hurting when you let others try to make that decision for you, you're allowing them to hurt you, and you can't allow anyone. You come first.
And if you're not fighting for your health, if you don't have your health, then what do you have? Like, and if
Absolutely.
you're not going to fight for your health, sorry, if you're not going to fight, then who
Yeah.
is? So yes, it may take a while. Obviously, I don't understand your medical system as well as I understand ours.
Yeah.
But if you know that you can get results at the end of it, it's worth it.
Hmm. No, absolutely. Is there anything else you would like to share with our supporters today?
Probably just like, you are worth it. So if you are struggling with anything, I know you're going to leave my details as you have previously. If there's anything that I can help with, I'm more than happy to. I do 30-minute free discovery calls, or like just a chat. So if you want to chat to me for an extra half an hour one-on-one, I'm more than happy to, if I can help in that way. We'll do that via Zoom. And other than that, then yeah, fight for your health and let's get stress under control.
Yes. And for our supporters who would be interested in having a session with Dr. Kate, if you go to our website at www.defeatingepilepsy.org, on our website, we have a section for community resources. If you scroll down our community resources to nutrition and health coaching, we have Dr. Couchman's information, and you can click on the link and schedule an appointment with her there. Well, that is all the time we have for today. Again, I want to thank Kate for coming and taking part. To see the great work we are doing, please like our social media pages and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We invite you to visit our website at www.defeatingepilepsy.org to see how we are making a difference for the epilepsy community. Thank you for your support, and together we will defeat epilepsy. Take care.